with Big Mo. Oh, man.
Christopher, you ready?
Are you going to keep boxing?
Yeah.
You really love this shit, huh?
So, this is how it ended. Jake Paul getting carried out with his jaw in pieces while Logan completely lost it on camera. And that breakdown nobody saw coming. Let me take you back though, because way before that final punch landed, way before the dead silence, way before everyone started panicking, this whole thing was being sold like some kind of fate, like the Paul brothers were about to completely flip boxing on its head. But here's the thing, the real damage wasn't even that knockout. It was everything getting ripped wide open for the world to see, the kind of exposure that tears apart everything you've built, and what you witnessed that night was just scratching the surface, because there's something much darker brewing underneath all this.
I just pissed him off, then he broke my brother's jaw. Fuck this guy. Broke his jaw, huh? Yeah, oh, he split his jaw.
Look, weeks before they even stepped in the ring, Logan was already talking reckless, going on about how Joshua was finished, how he was beatable, calling him some legacy that needed ending. When you run your mouth like that, you're not building hype anymore. You're betting everything you have on someone else's hands. And that's exactly what Logan did, tying his whole reputation to whatever Jake could pull off in there. The second that bell rang, there was no separating the brothers from the business. And when Jake started moving backward, you could literally watch their entire plan fall apart live.
Yeah, it was largely because he was mostly running away from AJ rather than standing toe-to-toe with him to fight. It's the difference between fighting a Bengal tiger and running away from a Bengal tiger.
All the red flags were flying high, but everybody chose to ignore them. Sports experts kept warning that influencer boxing crashes hard when it meets real heavyweight power, but the hype machine was too loud, the clicks were too easy, and nobody wanted to listen to reason. Then Joshua stepped in there looking patient and ice cold, and you could see it hit Jake immediately. His legs went stiff, shoulders locked up, eyes looking for somewhere to run. This wasn't about swagger anymore. This was pure survival mode, and that's where boxing careers go to die long before the knockout punch finds its target.
Oh, the uppercut, and he took it! Jake Paul took it! Oh, the right hand punch! Oh!
When those knockdowns started piling up, belief went out the window fast. Getting dropped 4 times isn't bad luck or coincidence. That's the sport teaching a lesson. When someone hits the canvas that many times, you're not watching competition anymore. You're watching education. And at 1 minute 31 of the 6th round, it was over. Not debatable, not questionable, just finished. That silence afterward wasn't surprise. It was understanding the sound of all that hype getting crushed by basic physics. And there's a reason those cameras immediately cut to Logan instead of showing the replay.
Since he quickly realized fighting AJ was not going to work for him, he naturally began incorporating even more flight, running away, and freezing, falling to the ground at any chance he had just to survive the rounds.
I mean, all it's doing is buying Jake Paul more time. I don't like it at all.
Do you remember what Mike Tyson famously said? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Anthony Joshua's gigantic.
So big.
He's so big. He's so much bigger. So, of course, like, his punch that he knocks Tyron Woodley out cold with, Joshua just eats it.
Yeah.
Because he's a giant.
Yeah.
He's a fucking giant.
Your brother fought his ass off, man.
I'm just so proud of him. My mom has me.
But then the stats came out and made everything so much worse. 16 punches landed out of 56 thrown isn't heart or courage. That's just getting dominated. When the medical reports dropped talking about double jaw fractures and emergency surgery, that should have been the end of the conversation. But it wasn't, because the real storm was just starting. Because while Jake was getting stretched out, Logan was having a complete meltdown. And that wasn't just brotherly concern, that was embarrassment, panic, and rage all exploding at once. And somebody needs to explain what was happening off camera during all that chaos.
Weights have taken that right hand and only took one.
I'm just so proud of him. That was incredible. In my view, that was a victory on all fronts.
Watching Logan in that moment felt wrong because it didn't look like love or worry. It looked like betrayal, like someone had destroyed his script without asking permission. That's why the commentators looked uncomfortable. This wasn't concern for family. This was damage control panic in high definition. And when your trash talk gets played back next to knockout footage, you don't get to spin it different later. Here's what keeps eating at me though. That anger didn't look sudden. It looked like it was already bottled up inside, just waiting to explode.
I expected him to the last 6 rounds with AJ. In my opinion, he won 4 of them. People will argue that. He at least won 3. No one expected him to last that long. Rolled his ankle, broke his jaw, still fucking fighting, man. Like, that's toughness.
The backstage stories made it even darker. All that shaking and shouting and pacing doesn't come from one punch. That comes from realization hitting you like a truck. The realization that the whole Paul experiment just hit a wall. It can't talk its way around. When people say Logan kept replaying that moment over and over, that tells you he was trying to rewrite it in his head, because the real version was too ugly to accept. And this whole thing can't be real unless way more was riding on this than just a win or loss.
That this YouTuber who's fought Tommy Fury, who's a legit boxer, and a couple other guys that were legit boxers. That's it. Like everyone else he's fought Ben Askren, who's really a wrestler. He fought Tyron Woodley, who was an elite MMA fighter, but not an elite boxer.
Days later, people see those meltdown clips and laugh, but I see something different. I see a warning signal. Because when ego gets louder than preparation, the sport always makes you pay the bill, and heavyweight boxing doesn't give refunds. This fight didn't just expose Jay, it exposed the whole system that pushed him into that ring. And here's the scary part. If they allowed this to happen once, someone else watching is already planning to try it again. Panic was the truth.
And there's some sort of a rehydration clause. Listen, kids, it ain't gonna matter. There's not a chance that Anthony Joshua is not going to just lose the weight beforehand. He's not going to come in drained. What he's going to do is just do extra cardio.
I was like, you leveled him. Go, go, go. Anthony Joshua didn't need to say a word afterward because the chaos said everything for him. Skill beat noise, experience crushed confidence, and that clear line between influencer boxing and real heavyweight competition got drawn in blood and panic. Once lines like that get drawn, they don't fade away. They get harder and permanent, and I don't think the Paul brothers understand how permanent that really is yet.
I think the camp wasn't 100%. Is that accurate?
That's kind of what I was gonna ask. Like, do you feel like it was your best camp?
No, I mean, just because I was weighing 200 pounds when we confirmed the fight.
What's wild is how fast everything collapsed. This wasn't a slow breakdown over rounds, it was instant. From cocky confidence to dead silence, from total control to complete chaos. And that speed tells you how fragile the whole foundation really was. When something cracks this publicly, more pieces usually fall later, and I keep wondering what's going to drop next, because something about this still feels unfinished.
And you wobbled. I was right there. I don't know if you heard me.
Yeah, I did.
Everyone thinks this will be remembered for the knockout, but they're wrong. It'll be remembered for when those cameras caught the truth, the rage, the panic, the complete exposure. That's why this story won't die. Because it wasn't scripted and it wasn't clean, and brands hate messy reality more than they hate losing, and reality showed up throwing bombs.
To get that world-class gas tank, you need a Sam Calavita, you need a Nick Curson, you need these plyometrics experts that who got heart rate monitors on you, and they're checking when your recovery is ready and go.
Yeah.
And you're fucking yeah. You need guys monitoring your recovery, monitoring your heart rate variability, your VO2 max.
So don't think this story is over, because this isn't finished. The damage goes way deeper than physical, and the sudden silence feels calculated, like someone is buying time before the next bomb drops. When stories go quiet this fast, it usually means something is getting negotiated, buried, or covered up, and I don't trust it for a second. Because the next update won't have anything to do with boxing, and when it hits, it's going to hit like a freight train. My read on this is that moment didn't just crack the Paul story, it broke it permanently, because once people see raw panic instead of rehearsed confidence, they never fully forget it. Logan's breakdown wasn't a mistake, it was a reveal. The kind that shows how much pressure was hiding behind all that swagger. Because if this was just about worrying for his brother, the reaction would have been quieter, gentler, protective, not sharp and explosive and defensive, like something precious had just been destroyed. I think people are sleeping on how devastating the psychological damage is here. Getting knocked out by Anthony Joshua is something your ego can survive. but watching your brand story implode in real time is a completely different kind of wound. That's why Logan's anger felt way too intense. This wasn't about the fight, this was about losing control, and control is everything to their whole operation. Without it, everything starts falling apart. What really gets me is how the actual fight became almost irrelevant within minutes. The conversation switched from performance to behavior, to image damage. That tells you the sporting result was already accepted deep down. Because once something feels inevitable, your mind jumps to consequences. And the consequence here wasn't rankings or rematch, it was credibility erosion, which is way harder to rebuild than a win streak. I don't buy that those calm statements afterward showed acceptance. I think they showed containment. When the tone flips that dramatically that fast, it means lawyers and managers and PR people stepped in to stop the bleeding. The problem with damage control is it confirms there was damage to control in the first place, and audiences are way smarter than brands think. They smell that shift immediately. Another thing nobody wants to admit is Jake didn't just lose to Joshua, he lost to the weight of expectations that Logan helped pile on him. When a fight becomes about family reputation, the fighter stops being an athlete and becomes a symbol, and symbols break under pressure. That's what we watched, not cowardice or weakness, but complete overload. I'm convinced this moment will age worse as time goes on, not better, because as future influencer fighters try to step up, people will point back to this as the warning. The night confidence met consequence head on. Every replay of Logan's reaction will hammer home the lesson that hype doesn't fail quietly. It explodes, and explosions leave wreckage long after the noise stops. There's something deeply wrong about how entertainment and real danger got mixed up here. The sport made money while real people paid with their bodies and minds. When that imbalance becomes obvious, audiences start asking moral questions. And once moral questions enter combat sports, they stick around like smoke, especially when the injuries are this visible and this serious. I don't think this ends with Jake walking away either. Walking away doesn't erase the footage or the reactions or the memes or all the analysis. Silence won't drown out what already went viral. That's why the next chapter feels dangerous. When people lose control of their story, they usually overcompensate. And overcompensation in this world usually means something loud and messy. What scares me most is how normal the survival talk became. Praising someone for surviving instead of competing signals a shift in what we expect. Once standards drop, the sport becomes less about being excellent and more about endurance theater. That's a path boxing has gone down before, and history shows it always regrets it later. In the end, this wasn't just a bad night or a bad matchup. This was a stress test that the Paul experiment failed publicly. Failed in a way that stripped away all the protective layers of jokes and confidence. When those layers fall off, what's left is very human and very breakable, and that fragility is now visible to everyone, which means whatever happens next will be watched differently, judged harder, and forgiven way less.
A guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're gonna fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists. The timing in that right hand, just spectacular.